Hi, and welcome to the TravelBoom Book Club. We have a very exciting roundtable today with two experts that'll be sure to knock your socks off. It's a little book club, and you're invited. Book club. I don't know. I think I need to do that again. Welcome to episode 220.
Keep it.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Welcome to episode 220 of the Hotel Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Pete DiMaio, and this will not be a boring book club. This is going to be a soaring book club, not just because of the book we're covering, but also because of our all-star guest lineup. So first of all, we have the one of the real women of vacation rentals, co-host of the Alex and Annie podcast, and chief marketing officer at Condo-World. Welcome to Alex Husner.
Thank you so much, Pete. This is just a dream to be on with both you and the next guest you're going to introduce. I don't want to ruin the surprise, but thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah, welcome back. And we also have returning is the best host the show has ever had and the chief marketing officer at Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce. It's Stuart Butler.
Hello!
I was hoping we'd get the hello.
I don't know about the best. I think you can misspell it.
Well, I don't have the English hello.
Hello!
It's very hard to master.
Yes. Mrs. Doubtfire will be very proud.
Yes.
So we got a pretty interesting podcast today. It's going to be a unique one. So what we wanted to do was say, hey, there's a lot of great marketing books out there in the world, and we haven't done a really good job of letting our listeners know what they need to be reading, and more importantly, exactly what they need to be thinking about the things they read. We have to program them. What do you think, Stuart and Alex?
Yeah, it's all about programming people to think the way we think, right? That's how we dominate the world. World domination.
Exactly. So we picked a book, we read it, and we're going to go through a little summary of it and talk about it. And you're welcome to join in and listen to us on the first book club. And if
Can
we
I
like
just
this,
say something I just realized this as you're saying this. Like I've listened to the book, digested the contents. I don't even know what the book's called. I completely didn't pay attention. Like you sent it out, I searched for it, found it, downloaded it, but I couldn't. If you asked me right now what was the book called, I couldn't tell you. Not bad.
Well, I can answer that question. I can answer that question for everybody.
Okay. Hey, Pete, what's the book called?
Stuart, I'm glad you asked me that because today we're going to be talking about Donald Miller's #1 bestseller, Building a StoryBrand.
That's it.
Yes.
I got confused on it too, Stuart, because I listened on two different audio platforms and trying to find it in there. I was using the words in different orders, I think. I was getting confused with StoryBrand, which he talks about, and the brand and the building. So I'm right there with you. It's a little bit of a tongue twister.
See, I was listening to Dennis Miller's book, Rants, to start with, and then I realized it's actually Donald Miller, and I listened to the book 3 times.
Yeah.
I had to real quick Google a book that Dennis Miller had written. So
that's funny.
Normally, when I go to book clubs, guys, they're normally more like wine clubs. You know, that's kind of what women do when we have a book club. It's more like a wine club, but we're not even drinking wine today, and we're not even sure what the name of the book is. So this is going to be a lot of fun.
We're nothing if not prepared. It is almost 3:30, so on a Friday that we're recording this.
We should have prepared some wine.
So my bar is 8 feet that way, so I can almost make it there to a bottle of scotch if you guys want. So I don't know how to send it to you though.
Yeah.
Well, cool. So hey, before we get into the big stuff, Alex, do you mind telling us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and how people can find out a little bit more about you before you jump in?
Yeah, sure. So as Pete said, I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Condo-World, which is a vacation rental business located in North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. So just up the road from Pete and Stuart here in our home area, the Myrtle Beach Grand Strand. And we've been here for as long as I've been alive, literally opened 1985, and I've seen the destination grow, and we've moved into other destinations in that time and have our OTA, condo-world.com as well. So it's been quite a journey. And in the last 9 months, I started a podcast with my podcast partner, Annie Holcomb, and we are together, Alex and Annie, the real women of vacation rentals. And you can go to alexandanniepodcast.com to check that out, or to see more about Condo-World, condo-world.com.
Nice. And hey, everyone who's listening, if you're listening to this the day the podcast comes out, which will be on Tuesday the 28th, tomorrow I'm going to be on the Alex and Annie show as well, talking about hurricane and disaster preparedness for people in the hospitality industry.
See, I mean, that's the best part about getting to talk to people like you guys, because we talk about a variety of topics, right? Books, hurricanes, marketing, everything. What can't we tackle?
Oh, we'll find some stuff. We'll just keep pushing forward.
We'll fall flat at some point.
Now, Stuart, you've been pretty busy as well as heading up everything at the Myrtle Beach Area Chamber of Commerce. What's going on?
Yeah, man. So I just hit my anniversary. I've been a recovering fueligan for over 12 months now, and it's been a whirlwind. We're on a mission here to really redefine what a destination marketing organization is and does, and we're doing some disruptive stuff. We started our very first podcast a couple of weeks ago. We launched it during Carolina Country Music Fest. It's called Myrtle Mums with Margaritas. So rather than a DMO podcast like people would normally do, where it's just a boring conversation with a bunch of locals about a bunch of stuff no one cares about, we're actually making it about being a mom and living in the Grand Strand and having fun and drinking margaritas. So we're trying to really leaning into what we're calling branded entertainment, which is really a continuation of what we started at Fuel and now TravelBoom, which is, how do you wrap the information, the knowledge you want to share with people in something that they actually want to consume, right? So that's why we always added levity to our podcast, and you continue to do that. And so we're trying to do that in the DMO space. It's funny. We always joked about the hotel industry was 5 years behind other industries, and from a marketing perspective, I would argue that the DMO space is 5 years behind the hotel industry. So I've got a decade of catch up to put in front of people. We just launched our new ad campaign, which is very bold and provocative, instead of a normal DMO campaign where it's here's people enjoying your destination that you don't really connect with emotionally. Here's our logo, and it could be any destination. We're actually kind of leaning into that, like insurance company, where we're creating a shtick and having mascots type characters or spokespeople that are recognizable. And so we've got like these two sportscasters we created. So if you go now to the Visit Myrtle Beach YouTube channel, you can see those commercials. There's like 4 30-second spots, but they're very, if you like the TravelBoom podcast, you'd like these commercials.
You'll get a kick out of them.
They have the same kind of sense of humor. Yeah. They're a little silly, There's some dad jokes in there hidden at the bottom in the little ticker. So, one of my favorite jokes in one of them is it says the beach tug of war contest enters its 9th hour. The competitors are at the end of their rope. So there's a lot of silliness like that. Right? So
that is a good one.
Yeah. We're doing a lot of different stuff, but I'm having a blast. Obviously miss you guys. I miss the hotel side of things. Like, I'm not going to be at High Tech, which is next week. It's the first time in like 15 years I haven't been at High Tech, but
wow,
making some new friends and shaking some stuff up. So it's been a lot of fun, and it's been a fun ride.
Absolutely. So and we'll link to both the Chamber site, the YouTube page, and Alex will link to Condo-World as well. Stuart, congratulations on your 1 year chip, though. That's a big accomplishment. You almost made it. Now you're falling back in.
Yeah. Well, I'm just shocked they haven't fired me yet, because we're definitely doing some disruptive stuff now. Now the fortunate thing is, and I've got 2 bosses, one of whom is my CEO, and she comes from the agency world, so she's given me a lot of latitude in terms of what we can get away with. But then my other boss is the chair of our board of directors, which happens to be your other guest today, Alex. So, Alex and I have known each other a while. She knows.
Yes.
She knew what she was getting into when they hired me, so she's given me a lot of latitude. There's been a lot of forgiveness too.
I knew fully well what I was getting into, because I was an avid listener. You guys know this, of this podcast for, gosh, I don't know, since 2015, I'd say. I'm pretty sure I've listened to almost every episode that's been out there. And really that was part of why I had always wanted to start a podcast, was just seeing what you guys did. And I send your old episodes to Annie sometimes. I'm like, look at how they did this. Just really, really cool. But you guys are an inspiration, and you didn't even know.
Oh, thank you so much. And Stuart, the good thing is she's very patient if she's listened to all of our episodes in the past. So I think you'll be fine.
I'm very tolerant of bad humor as well. Yeah.
Apparently, right?
Yeah.
So, well, hey, let's see if we can find some bad humor in our book discussion today. So for everybody again, just kind of
whoa. You don't do News and Ruse anymore? Like, that's the only reason I agreed to jump on.
This is a special edition of the podcast.
At least the jingle. Come on.
We need to think of a piece of news, and you do at least do the jingle. This is totally inexcusable.
Okay. Well, actually, I was afraid that was going to happen. So, let me get my top hat out and do your dancing monkey. All right. Okay. So here we go. Ready?
Drum roll.
With hotel marketing that cannot lose, now it's time for your news or ruse.
Oh, so good. So good. I missed that.
Well, you can keep listening to all other 219 episodes before this one and hear that as well. But yeah, so the news today comes from Hospitality Trends, and it's from June 23rd. So at the time you're listening to this, it's a couple of days old. It says, for week ending June 18th, hotel revenue per available room, or RevPAR as we call it, reached an all-time weekly high. This is from the Star Report for just the overall market, which I thought was pretty interesting. So basically, if we look at the 12th through the 18th of June, occupancy overall was at 71%, which was actually down about 5%. ADR was, across the U.S., in general, is $155, which is a almost 15% increase over last year, which is, again, a record as well. And then we look at revenue per available room. That was $111, which was up about 9.5%. So really, really interesting data here. I was a little bit surprised just because I know that we're starting to kind of come into a little bit of a crunch. We're starting to see a little bit of concerns in terms of people's confidence in the economy, but it's good to see that we are still have some very high numbers. Stuart, you probably know better than anybody about what's going on. What's the deal?
Yeah, and it's weird, right? Because our market is not following the national trend because we broke the trend last year so significantly. I don't know if your listeners know this, but Myrtle Beach area led the nation in recovery last year. Like if you look at STR's RevPAR reports and compare 2019 to 2021, we were one of only two destinations that actually saw positive growth. And the other was Virginia Beach, but we were significantly higher than them even. So we had a phenomenal 2021. 2022 has softened a little bit for us because we stole so much market share last year. But the nation as a whole has really seen good recovery. Now, there's a couple of factors that are going on here. The biggest one is that because the cost of operation has gone up significantly, labor costs, supply chain costs, ADRs had to grow, right? There's no way a lot of these accommodations could have continued to operate without an increase in price. But fortunately, the demand has been there thus far to warrant that, and people have been staying in hotels and still traveling. Now, I think we're probably on the cusp of a little bit of a decline. I think there's a lot of forecasts that suggest we could be heading into a recession in 2023. Gas prices being where they are, this consumer confidence is beginning to dip. So I don't think we're going to see a consistent growth trajectory at this point, but enjoy it while you can and get the rates you can and keep. Don't be afraid to try to reach for the right rate as demand is still there right now. But
I think it also matters too when people booked. I mean, looking at the booking window of what the rates are that are showing right now as so much higher. If people booked back in January, February, March, when everybody's prices were still high, then yes, they're arriving to a very expensive rental that they had bought. But now you see, people are just dropping rate like crazy, which of course.
Really dangerous.
We don't like that. I mean, this is essentially, and Stuart, this is kind of what we had a feeling was going to happen, and we kept telling everybody, please don't do that. I mean, don't start the year so high that then when you get down to the end of it, you're going to have to discount so low that really you didn't make any gains from what you had risen in the early part of the year. So unfortunately, we've seen that play out, and that's not just our destination. I think that's everywhere. But we're definitely seeing rates now as far as what's being booked right now, whether they're coming in a few weeks or they're coming in later this fall. The prices are much more normalized. They're very much similar to 2019.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be very similar to, let's kind of equate it to the real estate market in that prices went up like crazy. I mean, we saw ADR increases that were downright stupid, through 2021.
Greedy, right?
Yeah.
And it's starting to flatten out. We're not necessarily seeing it pull back to 2020 levels, but it is going to flatten out. We did a leisure travel study back at the end of April, where we specifically asked customers how rising prices, specifically gas and travel prices, are going to impact their travel plans for the summer. And there's a few key takeaways. We won't necessarily talk about them here, but if you go to travelboommarketing.com/blog, you can see the leisure travel study there. One thing I thought that was really interesting was 30% stated that their vacation plans will change due to rising costs. And what was also interesting is, and this one was a little bit shocking to me, is we asked the question, would you cancel an existing, already booked vacation if prices continue to increase? And 21% said that they would actually consider canceling an already booked vacation. So if you're a hotelier or a vacation rental manager, keep that in mind, that you still need to be selling the destination and extolling the virtues of going on a great trip to your property, even after that booking has taken place.
Yeah. You can't cash the money until they've stayed. So I think that's good advice. It's really interesting. I think, clearly there are market conditions that are changing. Interest rates just went up. We've got a lot of challenges in the labor force, and inflation's almost out of control, not quite. So I think we've got to look at all that. But it's so market specific. Like if you look at gas prices as an example, the assumption is, well, if gas prices go up, people have less money in their pocket, they'll travel less. Well, not necessarily. They might travel shorter distances, but not necessarily reduce the amount that they're traveling. So we actually did a study recently that looked at the impact of gas prices on the Myrtle Beach market. We actually found an inverse correlation. So as gas prices go up, occupancy actually goes up in Myrtle Beach. A hypothesis for that is, especially the Northeast, and really going east from along, from the bottom of South Carolina and going west, we think a lot of people that would traditionally travel down to Florida choose not to. They choose to come to Myrtle Beach because it's so much, they save half a day of driving and save a lot of money. So really look, don't get too caught up on national data and national trends. Really look at what it means for your market specifically, because you might see some opportunity.
Very true. With that, I should have never said that this might be a quick episode, because we have everybody on here and we have a whole bunch of great data. Don't discount that, though. This is going to be a longer episode, I think. There's going to be a lot of good stuff in here. And make sure that you're checking out that research that TravelBoom has done, obviously that Chamber has done, and that's out there, because there's a lot of great information that's going to help you become a better vacation rental and hotelier out there. So with that, we're going to go ahead and jump into the main topic of the episode, which is the book, Building a Brand Story by Donald Miller. Just a quick update of kind of what the book was all about. Donald Miller is making the case in his book that actually came out in 2017 that marketers are making it way too hard for customers to understand what they do, and makes it incredibly difficult to actually do business. He makes this point by comparing marketing to movies. And marketing is really nothing more than telling a great story. So as a marketer, if you can tell a great story and you can take your customer and put them into the story, we'll talk about that in just a second, it makes the conversion process way, way easier. One of the things that his points is that marketing and storytelling are both very formulaic. And he distills this down to basically one summary. And that is, a character who wants something encounters a problem before they can get it. At the peak of their despair, a guide steps in, gives them a plan, and calls them to action. This action helps them avoid failure and find success. So, as the hotelier or the marketer in general, Our job is to help guide them through that process and put that customer in the story and help them be the hero of their entire journey. So that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today. Stuart, we'll start with you. Top line, is this a good book or is this a book that we throw in the trash?
No, I definitely had some challenges with it and didn't agree with everything they said or how they went about it. But I think overall there's some really valuable lessons that are articulated in a way that I think will resonate with people. I think the biggest one of all being focused on your customer, not on yourself, which is something we've talked about a ton on the show. I think you did a whole episode about that with Jeff Bezos' approach of being, completely obsessed with the customer is what Amazon does. And so I think if you take nothing else from this book, that's a lesson that I think everyone can learn from is putting the guest at the center of every decision you make is going to make you a better marketer.
Good man. Good point. How about you, Alex? Is it a keeper or a trasher?
I think it's a good book, honestly, and it's one of those. It's a type of book that is good to read when you haven't, you feel like we as marketers, we know all this stuff, but it's just a good reminder. And actually, I had some good takeaways that for different campaigns that we're working on, both with Condo-World and the podcast, that I was like, okay, it either confirmed what I'm thinking is going in the right direction or made me remember, I might need to tweak that a little bit just to make sure that we're, really hitting people where it's important to hit them. But, storytelling has always been a part of marketing, and marketing can become very tactical in a lot of cases. And I think that's when you really lose. Having that emotional connection is so important. I mean, you can't move people until you touch them, right? So they've got to have that emotional connection with people. And one of my favorite lines in this book, and I recently heard it in another, I don't know if it was a book or a podcast, but about the concept that people want to be taken somewhere. And I think that's really powerful, that you want to take them on a journey. They want to feel like they're being led to greener pastures or to something that's taking them somewhere different than where they are, whether it's that they're being taken somewhere literally, that if you're a resort or a hotel, you're taking them and their family on this beautiful vacation, or if it's a product that you're taking them to become a better version of themselves. Just really being mindful of that and how you communicate is really key.
Well, that actually ties into the very first thing I was going to bring up kind of as a discussion point. And that is the question of who is the hero and who is the guide. So the way it's described in the book is, let's look at Star Wars. Jean-Luc Picard could not have been who he was if it wasn't for Obi-Wan Kenobi.
You're going to lose me on this because I don't know anything about Star Wars.
Alex, joke went right over Alex's head.
Yeah, right over my head. Stuart, you know everything he's talking about. But
No. So obviously, Jean-Luc Picard is Star Trek and not Star Wars.
Oh, see, I really didn't even get it.
Yeah, which destroys.
I have met William Shatner many times. That's about as close as I get to it. I know.
So, but no. So in the Star Wars example, Luke Skywalker could never have been who he was as the hero of the story had it not been for Obi-Wan Kenobi to be his guide through that process. Mm-hmm. So the whole point of the book is to make the customer, the Luke Skywalker, the hotelier or the marketer is going to be the Obi-Wan Kenobi. Our job is not to be the hero and come in and save the vacationer's day. Our job is to be the guide that helps the vacationer save their own day.
Yeah,
so let's
absolutely.
talk about that. Let's talk about a little bit about that hero versus guide concept. I think a lot of hoteliers, quite frankly, screw that up and try to become the hero.
And the book gave some really good, tangible examples of that from a bunch of businesses, including hotels, right? So I think that's intangible. But it's like when you go to a homepage of a website and it says, established in 1974, founded by this random guy. Like, people don't care, but that's not why they're coming to stay. And unless you're like on the extreme end of history, that's not what people want. It's like, if you tell them what it offers to them, the hero of the story,
it for me?
A lot more, you're going to have the best, most worry-free, relaxing vacation you've ever had, is a lot more powerful than showing a picture of the outside of the hotel and talking about your history. So I think that's a mistake a lot of hotels make.
Well, and I know that, I make this all the time in that we want to, obviously from more of the hotel marketing side, we want the hotel and the property to be amazing. So we keep telling everybody, hey, the property can do this. You can do this at the property. Where in reality, I think we have to change our copy and our message to be, you need a great vacation. You need to reconnect with your family. These are the problems that you have. Oh, good news. I actually know how you can solve all your problems with our property. It's not necessarily that our property is the destination. That connection to your family is the destination, that the relaxation, whatever it might be that makes you want to get away. We're the people who help facilitate that. We're not the people who come in and hit the home run. We leave that to the customer.
Yeah, and I think we're all guilty of that. That's definitely something that everybody can look at their website and probably find some copy that can be, just flip the script on it a little bit, because that is important. I think in our industry, vacation rentals specifically, one thing that I don't think we emphasize enough, that I want to go back and look at some of our messaging, is that if people are planning a multifamily vacation and they pick a property through us, it's a process, right? You've got several family members and different families that are deciding, and there's a lot of money going around, and there's a lot of stress on that person that's planning the trip. So for them, they want to make sure that when everybody gets there, that everything has gone well, and that they really are the hero to the family, because the vacation is everything that they expected and more. But what we see happen often is that, especially with Airbnb and some of these new ways of booking rentals popping up, people get to what they thought was going to be a wonderful vacation, and it is not at all what it was pictured. Sometimes the unit isn't even really available, and that's the absolute nightmare for that family and that guest. So it's important to play up that if you're a professional company, resort, hotel, you're going to make that process and that experience stress-free and make them really look like the hero.
And Alex, you have a perfect example of, in your business from a vacation rental side, you really have to be the guide, because there's a lot more questions, there's a lot more uncertainty, and a heck of a lot more stress.
Yeah.
And, and that person checks in and they're sitting around, with a drink in hand, getting in the hot tub at the property. Nobody's saying, hey, let's all talk about how Alex was the big hero of today.
Right.
Nobody, they don't want to hear that. They want to hear how I was the one who saved the day. Yeah. This is my family, and everybody's looking up to me as being the fantastic dad who was able to get a great vacation.
Exactly. So. Exactly. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, and what I liked about how they presented it was weird. It was kind of like a schizophrenic book, because it sort of focused so much on the story. I forget what they call it, but he has a
SB7 framework.
Framework, right, that he has, and it's very, very palatable. It breaks it down into very easy to understand components. That's the kind of the first part of the book, and then he just kind of starts rambling about email marketing and stuff in the second last part.
Yeah, there's a few weird spots.
It was kind of weird. Yeah. But I really like the framework that is developed, because it almost doesn't matter if it's the right framework or the perfect framework. The fact that they have this process to go through that makes you think, that you can follow step by step, I think is a strong exercise for most marketers to follow, because I always say on the podcast a lot, like where focus goes, energy flows. And if you're breaking this down into its component pieces, you're going to have to focus on the things that are important, like who's the audience, right? And what do they care about? And what are the problems you're solving? And what are the calls to actions? And what is the journey? So I really like that component of the book. I do think they were way overselling their own services throughout. Like there's a lot of, and he was doing what he's preaching, and it's probably the right thing to do, and he probably gets more results because of it. But God, it was annoying. Every 5 minutes, go to our website and do this.
Yeah, and I went there and I checked it out, and I mean, there's nothing. I didn't go through the process of it, but for some people maybe that's helpful. But sometimes I think just being able to consume it and listen to it and think about it in your own mind, for me that's normally enough. But I just look back through my notes, because there's so much in this that I've been trying to figure out where I've heard this. I was at a conference a few years ago, and this was a very well-known speaker in the speaker world. His name is Pete Vargas, and he had a version of this, but it's simplified, and it was called it was a StoryBrand, but it was the process that you take somebody through when you're giving a speech or when you're doing marketing. Anything can be applied: heart, head, hands, and then heart. And it's similar to what this book talks about, but I think that concept is really cool. Just briefly tell you, heart, the first part of the message, you connect with their hearts, and the connection of your story. Head, your proprietary process. That's the framework that's moving you to that next part of the journey. Hands, the call to action, what they need to do to get whatever this journey is you're telling them about. And then heart, one more time to seal the deal, emotional call that circles back to the beginning of the presentation. And I think, having a framework like that, or like the one in this book, it is helpful because, like I said, I don't listen to books like this all the time, but it's a good reminder to have something like that if you found a strategy that works for you in your communications, just to have around when you're building campaigns out, because it keeps you consistent, and sometimes it's easy to forget about the basics.
Yeah, there was one point in there, and kind of to build on that point, Alex, where he talks about, obviously marketing is formulaic, storytelling is formulaic, but then he ties it into music also being formulaic. Yeah. And this is the part that resonated with me, was the difference between music and noise.
That's because you're so musical with your jingles.
It is.
Yeah, no wonder.
If you notice that I started singing the jingle in 2017, and this book came out in 2017. Oh.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying. No, but his story is the difference between.
Just trying to get him on the
show. No. I was leaning to that. I read this book in 2017. That's why I make great music. No, okay. But the point being that the difference between music and noise is that formulaic approach. By putting the notes and the chords together in the proper format, makes something sound amazing, and also makes it memorable. And if I just throw all the music out there, all the sound out there, it doesn't do anything. So, so I found that formulaic approach is really helpful. So,
yeah, for sure. It keeps you focused on the priorities, right? I think it does cut out a lot of the noise. There's so many. Every day that you as a marketer come into the office, there's 1,000 things in front of you that you could tackle. What this helps you do, having any kind of process helps you do, is say, here's how I prioritize what I'm going to work on today. And so it stops you getting off track. It keeps you guided towards your North Star, whatever that is.
Yep. So that's kind of the hero versus guide, the formulaic approach. So the next question I have for you is, is a vacation life or death? And what I mean by that is, in the book, he talks about how everything in our caveman brain is about survival. And that survival doesn't necessarily have to be food. It's all of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. It's everything from self-actualization all the way down to, from a hotel or vacation rental's perspective, shelter. So it's kind of everything in between there. And as marketers, do we get too complex and try to just throw everything out there and create, like you just said, create all that noise? And does that make our caveman brain not understand how we're going to survive or thrive because of, in our case, taking a vacation?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Maslow's hierarchy is used a lot as a psychology tool in marketing, right? And it can be used in a hyperbolic way, which I think is what he was doing, right? Because clearly you're not going to die if you don't take a vacation.
Right.
You're not going to live the fullest life you can if you don't rest and relax, and more importantly, connect with people, right? Because the social, as you go up up Maslow's hierarchy from the survival things like food and water and shelter and stuff, it gets into the social connections and the need for relationships and stuff like that. And I think that's where this is probably more apt to fit in. So definitely, like, literally you're not going to die, but I think it's very important. And most people recognize the importance for rest and relaxation and connecting with family and friends and things like that. So I do think there's a way to leverage that in your messaging to really pull on the, what he broke it down into, like the internal problems, the external problems, and then it's like the philosophical problems, right? That you can tackle. And I think travel, vacation, taking a break, all that can meet all three of those needs.
Well, I think he also looks at it in terms of kind of going back to pure survival, that everything you do in life consumes calories. And I thought this was kind of a funny way of looking at it, that if I look at something, it's either, threat or not a threat. Then is it going to be food or not food? And then it starts going up that need, will it create belongingness? But if I have to think about it really hard and I don't know what you offer because you're telling me that this property was founded in 1961 and we have a phenomenal HVAC system and all this crap, I'm burning calories before I get to the point of, and my family's going to love me more because I took them on vacation.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, he lost me a little bit on that one. I'll be honest. I get what he's trying to articulate. I didn't particularly like the way it was delivered because I don't think there's a conscious decision in the human brain that I'm burning calories and this is too much effort.
Well, I think his point is it's subconscious.
Right. And it's really about, it's not about the calories being burned, right? I think
it's
that was sort of a red herring.
Expelled.
It is energy in a way, but it's as much about time and focus as it is about anything else. Like the physical measurement of energy in calories is one way to look at it, but it is about effort, and that's not just the amount of energy; it's the amount of time. It's how hard is it? It's a lot of things. So I felt like calories was a red herring, but it's about path of least resistance. How do you create the path of least resistance to make it frictionless for someone to do what you want them to do?
Yeah, I mean, I know many times I've been planning a vacation. If I'm at home, I'm sitting on the couch and looking on my phone or laptop and going through different sites. And sometimes you get to a point where either if you're trying to check 3 websites against each other, or the website is confusing, you get frustrated and you just give up, right? And it's like, it's not worth it. And really that's my internal system telling me, I didn't really think about it this way, but you've burned enough calories on this for now. Like, you can't keep going. But you don't want to keep going down that. It's the friction, it stops you. But as far as the Maslow part, I mean, once your needs have been met, once your shelter is good, you've got your food, all that. I mean, of course, if you're worried about any of those core elements, you're definitely not thinking about a vacation. But that next step of what people do think about, I mean, a vacation is pretty high up in the hierarchy, and we know that because we see even in recessions, people still go on vacations. I mean, at least to our area, they do, because it's an affordable drive destination to get to. But it's, revenge travel is a thing, but also it's like, I feel like vacations can play against a lot of different emotions. That you go on vacation when you're mad, you go on vacation when you're sad, when you're happy. I mean, it can play into so many different reasons for travel. So that's, I guess, the good thing about our industry is that there's a lot of different ways to package it. And even if somebody's, no matter what state they're in, they'll probably still go on a vacation.
Yeah, I mean, that was proven out with the pandemic, really. Like, everyone was told, you can't do anything. And we're like, screw that, I'm going on vacation.
Yeah. Try telling a teenager or anybody, hey, you can't do this.
Yeah.
And we had one of our email campaigns that, like, when everything opened back up, was a family, and the guy's standing, he's got his wife and his 2 kids, and he's got his arm in the air, and he said, and the tagline was, "Take back your vacation." I mean, like, and it just did gangbusters, because people, they're like, yes, I'll be back there.
Yeah, we need to kind of like have the Red Dawn thing stored in the top of a Myrtle Beach hotel with someone holding like a surfboard over their head going, whoa.
Yeah, that's right.
But so the next topic of discussion, we kind of talked about the hierarchy of needs and everything, but he makes the point of, don't make your story or your offering too complex.
Yeah,
I like how he kind of brought in the story of the Bourne identity, and how Jason Bourne, he has that true, a character has a problem, he's trying to solve it to find success. So Jason Bourne, he doesn't know who he is, he has to find his way. He finds somebody who can help guide him, and he works through that process. The way Miller goes through that process, he says, now, if you also found out that Jason was, let's say, studying how to become a chef and wanted to remodel his room, all this stuff that would make the story way too complex, the listener or the viewer in that case will lose interest and walk away. That's very similar to how poor marketers, and honestly good marketers as well, we do the same thing on our websites. And Stuart, you mentioned this as well, is we talk about too much stuff versus just how do we make that customer the hero and book now.
Yeah. I mean, I think you've got to always prioritize the value prop that you offer, and fully recognize that the value prop might be different for different audience members, right? So how do you parse that? How do you sort people into neat buckets so you can sell them on the things. But if you've got like the 50 reasons to visit your hotel on your homepage, no one's going to do it. And he talked a lot about this, about how people don't really read content. Like, they don't really read websites. You've got to really do it in bullet form. And I like the example he gave. Like, you've got to make it so easy that a caveman can understand it. And he did his little kind of caveman impression of, this good, me like, me want, that kind of stuff. Like, I think you do have to really aim for that. Like, that's an oversimplification, which he did a lot in this. Like, that, I think that's the biggest problem I had with the book overall, was he would either super exaggerate something or oversimplify something. He wasn't not a very nuanced communicator. And so, but I do think that the more simple you can communicate the most important things, and prioritize those things, I think the more impact you can have.
Yeah, that point really, it stood out to me, and a perfect example of how I've seen that in our business. Our CEO and founder, Roy Clyburn, passed away last year, but when he led the marketing for the company for the majority of their years until I came 13 years ago. And in that time, most of the advertising was newspaper ads that he was doing, writing copy for and picking out pictures. And one of the headlines of the newspaper ads that we ran the most was just said, "We rent condos." Simple as that. We rent condos. And we've got a painting in his office that has that same tagline on it. We rent condos, and it says it's a business deceptively simple yet endlessly complicated, which it is. But it's basic, and you want to hit people between the eyes. You don't have a lot of time, and I know in our industry, when I go to some companies' websites, it's hard to tell if they are a real estate company, a property management company, a rental company. In most cases, we all do a little bit of each of those, but sometimes you can't tell. And you guys have talked about this on previous podcasts about, there's always competing interests within a business of what do we put in the homepage, what images are we showing, and like what's most important. Well, sometimes showing golf, even though we're trying to promote golf, isn't the most important thing to have on the homepage, because you're detracting from the people that are just there to book the family vacation. So I think really understanding your audience and knowing where they're landing on your site or in your marketing, and making sure that you're speaking to the masses, and then be more specific in the pages or areas where it makes sense to show the other types of services that you have.
I equate that when we are looking at a site, we're doing our analysis of what works and what doesn't work. We use a system called Microsoft Clarity, which we're big fans of. And when you look at Clarity, it's a heat mapping and a scroll mapping and a bunch of user recordings system that helps us understand kind of user experience. And the first thing you notice is most people, particularly on a hospitality-based website, they go to the homepage, they look for a date picker, they click on check rates or book now or whatever that call to action is. And all the junk that surrounds that is just noise preventing them from saying arrival, departure, search. Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? All the things that we've debate and spend so much time trying to figure out over the years. You're 100% right. We see the same thing.
Well, good. All right. So the last thing I really wanted to quick touch on that Mr. Miller talks about is that customers don't want to be convinced. They want help solving the problem that they already have. Mm-hmm. So in some cases, hoteliers can, or Stuart, probably more your case, the vacation destination in general, can kind of spur that problem or spur the awareness of the problem. But customers want to become brand advocates and get our help solving the problem. Mm-hmm. We don't necessarily need to shove it down their throats. So what do you guys think about that one takeaway from the story?
Yeah, it was interesting, right? Because he said that, but then he also said how you need to put calls to action specifically everywhere which are really hard selling people at different levels of the journey, right? So you need to, like in a hotel's case, the call to action might be book now, but it also might be check availability, right? So those are two different levels of call to action, but you need them at the top, the bottom, the middle. So he's sort of contradicting himself a little bit there, I feel like. But I do agree, in general, you're more effective if you help, not sell. That's always was our philosophy at Fuel and TravelBoom. And I think people don't like to be told specifically what they should do. They like to be nudged into coming to that conclusion themselves. I don't know if you guys really followed the Johnny Depp trial and Amber Heard trial. it was the most compelling TV I've ever seen. I was like every night I was looking at YouTube clips of the trial. But one of the things that was really interesting is his lawyer. She would lead out a bunch of breadcrumbs to a conclusion. Like she'd say, well, Amber does this and Amber does that and Amber does this. But then she would never, and it would all lead towards a conclusion, but she never stated what that conclusion was because she wanted the jury to piece it together and make the decision, because there's a psychological, I don't know, phenomenon, I guess, that if you come up with the idea yourself, if it's your decision or if you make the inference, it sticks. Versus if someone tells you something, your natural inclination is to look for reasons why that's not true. Absolutely. So I think it's the same with selling people on a hotel. Like you don't want to come out and say, you have to stay at this hotel.
Right.
You want to breadcrumb them to the reasons why they might want to come to that conclusion. So I think he's sort of right, but I also think you've got to sell through call to action at the same time.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And one thing that I kind of struggled with in the book was it's a balance of, I mean, you want to mention your customers' problems, and you engage. They're going to engage with you more when they know what you're offering and how you're going to be able to address those problems. But at the same time, I don't like to have my advertising say what I'm not, right? So it's like if say we were going to spin what we've talked about to say, okay, if you book at Condo-World, you're not going to have to deal with not knowing if your unit's in good condition, like if you booked with Airbnb or something, like there's and different variations of that. But I don't like to say what I'm not. I don't think that that's a positive way to do things. But at the same time, that balance of still mentioning their problems, but putting it in a positive way that, like you said, Stuart, nudges them along to make their own decisions on which would you choose, knowing all the facts at this point. But
yeah, he talked about in the book, and I like this analogy, he talked about like the different ingredients of people's decision making and how fear, like, so what you would be doing there by you, if you said you don't risk staying at an Airbnb because you might end up with a shite property or something like that, right? Yeah. That's a fear motivator, which is powerful if used sparingly. If you overwhelm someone with fear, they tend to get paralyzed. But he said it's like fear is like salt, right? You just need a sprinkle of fear, whether that's fear of missing out or fear of making the wrong decision. Yeah. You've got to use it really sparingly. If you put too much salt in your recipe, it's going to be overpowering. So I think something with fear is that.
Yeah.
No, and I say one thing that kind of goes to that is I think what he was also speaking to is it's not necessarily putting the fear in, but it's alleviating the fear that might be behind the scenes in that person's head.
Right. Acknowledging the fear that's there, right?
And saying, hey, don't worry. I know you haven't worried about this yet, but you don't have to worry about this in the future either, because at Condo-World, all of our condos have this clean guarantee, whatever it might be.
Yeah, and it's tough though, because it's like, if we say it that way, then it goes kind of back to, well, now we're just talking about ourselves again. So it really, he's right, but it makes writing copy a little bit complicated to get it perfect.
He ties everything to movies and stories, and that stuff is complicated, right? And that's that's why it's hard to find great marketers, and we're lucky we got a couple right here that we
great copywriters. I tell you what, it is really hard to find people that are great at writing copy.
Yeah. Well, I think the problem is a lot of marketers don't spend enough time on copywriting. It's sort of the last piece of the puzzle sometimes, and it's usually rushed and shit. One of the things he did say about with his whole framework is, you're creating your brand story, and it's a very methodical thing, but it's not done. Like, get the first version done, but then litmus test it, share it with people, get feedback. It should evolve. And I think we as marketers a lot of times will ship out an ad or ship out the website homepage copy, and it's done, and then we move on to the next thing. But I think good copy does evolve, and as you learn and as you evolve, I think you should be putting the appropriate amount of energy back into reevaluating and refining that.
There's a quote that I love is from Pascal. It says, "I would have written a shorter letter, but I didn't have time." I think Mark Twain also said, I didn't have time to write you a short letter, so I wrote you a long one.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, that's
tough. It is tough.
Yeah, when you distill something down to just the main point, it takes a lot of time, and that's where great copy comes in. So
for sure. I was trying to think about that when I'm writing an email, and if I see that the email's getting really long, I'm like, okay, I got to hold on, take a break, because I can probably eliminate at least 50% of everything that's in there because I'm going way too deep into things.
Some of it's redundant,
People.
repetitive,
People.
not enough clarity. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's an art,
right.
man. It's an art. If you can write succinctly and effectively, I mean, there's no stopping you. That's a really powerful weapon.
Yeah.
All right. So we're going to head into a little rapid fire section.
Pew, 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 pew.
So, all right. So going around the table, starting with Alex on this one and then Stuart, I want to hear your key takeaway from this book. Just one sentence or so of what it is.
Oh, boy. I still go back to my, I think maybe I jumped the gun. I said it earlier in the first question you asked me, but that people want to be taken somewhere, and really just thinking about that message as you're crafting your campaigns, as you're looking at the copy, whether you write it or somebody else does, where is it taking, where's the journey taking them? It needs to be outside of the walls of whatever it is that you're selling, and just really being mindful of just getting into the minds of the customer. And for me, when I listen to books like this, I think about my own experience. And we just went to Cartagena, Colombia back in March for vacation. And I know booking that trip, I was very much in this mindset that I was like, this is confusing to me. Country I've never been to. There's a lot of unknowns. And I got frustrated many times and just gave up on the process. Like, obviously burned too many calories, according to him. But when I went back into it, I'm like, okay, I want to find a place to stay that is going to meet all the criteria. I want to make sure we're safe, and I want to make sure that it's nice and that this is a great trip, and that my husband doesn't kill me for taking him to a country we've never been before. And all those things were accomplished. So it's important to be mindful of why your people are traveling.
Love it. So good takeaway. Stuart, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think the quintessential part of the book is talking about how you're not the hero of the story, that the consumer is, right? And I think that's the most important lesson any marketer can learn. I think is it's not about them, it's about the customer. Always, if you're unashamedly obsessed with the customer in every decision you make, you're going to be fine. And that's how you improve, because it forces you to listen to the customer. It forces you to do things that maybe are inconvenient to you and your staff because it benefits the customer. It just puts you in the right mindset, I think. So I think that's probably the biggest one. And then secondarily to that is like just having a framework or having a process that or being sort of semi-rigid with how you go about doing whatever it is you do, I think is important. I think that's the differentiator between good marketers and great marketers. Every great marketer you ever come across is very process oriented. Like there's clearly a lot of creativity involved with great marketers, but they follow certain rules that they occasionally break, but for the most part they'll stick to those rules or those frameworks or those processes. So I think that would be my biggest takeaways.
Okay. Well, you stole my takeaway, but I have a spare.
I was going to say your instructions said to have a spare. So
I know, and I did. So my spare was, I love the fact that he said that mission statements are useless. Instead, have a one-liner, and have a one-liner that everybody on your staff, everyone who works with you, completely understands and buys into. Mm-hmm. The lofty goal of, we've been in business since such and such a year, and we do this and this. Boil it down to, in the case of TravelBoom, we help independent hoteliers succeed online. Something very simple and succinct that says, oh, okay, now I know what you do. And if everybody understands what that is and buys into it, from a hotelier's perspective, that means your housekeeping staff, your front desk staff, your maintenance, your reservationists, your web developers, whoever it might be, can say, oh, I know what I'm working toward. Because if your staff doesn't understand what you do or what role you play in this customer's journey and their story, how are you supposed to be the guide if you don't know what you're guiding them toward?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good one. That was my spare too. I think we talked before on the show about having a scoreboard. Like the best hotels that we ever worked with at Fuel were the ones where there was alignment between the departments, where revenue management and sales and marketing and operations, everyone was playing to the same scoreboard, right? They knew what success was. It had clarity of definition. they measured it often, and they spoke about it a lot. Like that alignment of effort makes a big difference in any organization. And I think what he was saying here was the same thing. If you have a tagline, or like a movie does, right? It describes what the movie is. If you can have that in a very boilerplate manner that actually is meaningful, not a mission statement where you use a lot of hyperbole and silly words. Like we used to have one before Fuel was Fuel. It was called Intellistrand, and it was we are exceptional individuals who offer unparalleled this and cutting edge that, and it was just word vomiting and didn't really mean a whole lot. So I think if you can boil it down to something, he had a really cool tactic, which I love in terms of getting buy-in, where he said, once you've developed what it is and you've explained it to people and they get it, test them and make sure it's in the DNA of the organization. Go around and ask people to repeat it, and if they do, give them $5 or give them some incentive. And he said it might cost you $1,000 or so to get that into everyone's head, but that'll be the best $1,000 you ever spend. Because now you've got alignment behind the whole team on a specific mission. So, yeah, it's
Perfect.
We rent condos.
Yeah, we rent
Plain and
condos.
simple.
Yeah.
Except now, a lot of times, and this could be a whole nother episode, but when I say that to somebody, I say, well, what do you mean? Like, we rent Airbnbs. Oh, okay. I hate that, but it's just, it is what it is. That's the villain in my story right now.
I love it. Awesome. Okay, so here's the last little rapid fire one. You are the editor for Donald Miller's book, Building a Brand Story. What is one thing that you would have cut or tweaked about this book? Stuart, you go first this time. Alex went first.
His inaccurate portrayal of Star Wars. That would probably be mine. So
that was me. He didn't say Jean-Luc Picard.
No. That's true. Oh, I thought that was him, though. No. Well, he jumped between, and he's right about the fact that Obi-Wan is the guide in A New Hope and in Empire and Return of the Jedi, right? But Yoda's also the guide. So he kept flipping between Yoda and Obi-Wan, who are both play the guide role. But the mistake he made is at one point he said, at the end, the guide celebrates with the hero, and at the end of quote unquote Star Wars, which what does that mean? Because there's not a movie called Star Wars, there's a series. Obi-Wan was standing next to Luke and celebrating, which that never happened. As Luke was rewarded, is what he said. And so if he's talking about A New Hope, where he blew up the Death Star, Obi-Wan's not there celebrating with him. If he's talking about Return of the Jedi, Obi-Wan was off to the side, not standing next to him. So fundamental issue with his Star Wars analogy. That's
this book is trash.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, right?
I can't believe you even went past that point. You take it so personal.
Almost threw it in the trash. And the sad thing about it is I was listening to it on audio on my phone, so I almost threw away my iPhone. Disgusted.
All right, that's a good answer. Alex, how about you?
I really didn't. I didn't have any problems with the book per se. I just wasn't really looking at it that way when I read it. But if anything, I would say he had a lot of calls to action to go to his site and use what the resources that are there. And I guess when I went there and I didn't really see a whole lot, it left me just kind of void. I was expecting it was going to be a great site with a lot of helpful information, and those different using the framework was going to be great, but it really wasn't that exciting or anything that I didn't get already just from listening to the book. So I would say he missed the mark on what he's telling people to go do, because it's not as amazing as he maybe thinks it is.
All right. So,
tough crowd here, right?
Right. Yeah. So,
what about you, Pete? What was yours?
Yeah.
So I'd say that the one thing that I felt was, and this is not about his writing or what he was talking about specifically, but I felt like he was giving very tactical recommendations for websites and marketing. And he was talking to 2022 Pete. Yeah. And he's talking to me from 2017. A lot of the specific tactics he was talking about were dated, or I know I need to do that. Yes, we need to make sure the website does this or that. So I think just from a book perspective, if he wants to lead us to the website for that SB7 framework for those more tactical things where you can update them. But the fact that I'm listening to the book saying, hey, you need to make sure your website uses a pop-up to get an email address. Like,
right. Yeah.
We've all kind of figured that out by this point.
That's where I felt like it was a little schizophrenic, because there was a lot of
Yeah.
strategic approach to marketing and the whole storytelling framework. But then, like, that last chapter literally was build an email database, and you can use MailChimp, and you should set up a drip campaign. And it was like, this is not it doesn't fit with the rest of the tone of the book at all.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with
like
that.
a brain dump, but
Yeah. So, all right. So there's one little section. We're going to go through this quickly. You guys have already gone first, so I'll go for this one. And this is how hoteliers or vacation rentals or just destination marketers in general can put this into action. So my thought here is to get personal with your marketing and to knowing that you have the data. You're collecting information about the user, how they act on the website, what their desires are, what's going to be their triggers. Put that into actual action. And I think, we've talked about this for years, Stuart, but we never really have gotten it perfect. Good example, and Stuart, hopefully you don't mind me sharing this, but you want to create it to where it's a true story. So in our story, Stuart's family is battling with COVID. They come out the other side stronger and want to go somewhere that's not home for vacation. Stuart has to hit a home run for his vacation that will save summer, and your property is clean, fun, and ready to accept him.
Wait, when you say save summer, you're saying my wife summer?
I didn't think about that way, yes.
The season summer.
You have to save the summer vacation season.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think that's where we always miss the mark is we try to say we're personalizing because we put the first name in the subject line or the body, but we're not drilling down to that next level of true database of one that I think we should get to. And his book does talk a lot about creating that as if you want to put the customer as the hero in the story, you probably should have the customer in the story.
Yeah, 100% agree. I think it's a good book. I would recommend anyone read it. And probably the vast majority of folks listening to go through the exercise, actually try to create your own brand story. Not necessarily to use it always, but to make you think about each of the steps. Mm-hmm. He does get into the psychology of individual people. He gets into the tactics of calls to action. Like, there's a lot of value there. I mean, I think it's a boiled down version of probably 50 episodes of the podcast you've done, right?
Mm-hmm.
And probably not as in depth as the podcast has done, but I think there's a lot of value, even if it's just a good reminder. There's a lot of things to think about, and I think every marketer can take something out of it and say, yeah, I could do that better, even if you were doing it already. So
it was a good reminder of a lot of just kind of fundamental things. There wasn't anything that I have never heard before in this book, but just a good reminder. Yeah. What?
Other than Star Wars, you hadn't heard.
I have never heard of that before.
Yeah.
A new thing, apparently.
Yeah. All right. So, Alex, anything else that you would recommend hoteliers put into action?
I think we've kind of already covered them all, but I think just really putting your customer make them the hero, let them be the hero of the journey. You're just inching them along the way.
Good. Awesome.
Yeah. You talk about like how you leverage that too in a few ways. Like one of the parts you talked about, which is again into the tactics, but I thought was more apt than some of the email stuff, was you talking about like testimonials being a massive opportunity to sell new audiences, and I think that's something that hotels vastly underutilizes. Word of mouth, whether that be in the form of a review or a testimonial. I think that's still one of the most compelling ways to explain to someone in a third person voice that they should consider your product.
I agree with that, and I think that's like the better way of doing what he talks about. To not do that, to not say we've been in business since 1985 and we were founded here and this and that, whatever. Mm-hmm. You're doing that because you're trying to establish trust with your customers, but establish the trust from the words of the people that know the brand or your hotel, and that's your customers. So I think by showing testimonials, that's a great trust factor. Put them on the checkout page. Actually, we're in the process of redoing our website right now. And that's one thing that we just talked about, was putting testimonials in the footer when they're in that checkout phase. And you see that a lot on regular e-commerce sites. I mean, that's that trust verification.
Yeah. Well, at every step of the e-commerce space, you need to say, what are the questions they'll have, or the doubts or the fears they'll have, and how do I address it?
Yeah.
Like, so a checkout
Yeah.
page is easy. Like, put some testimonials to nudge them over. Put that this is secure. Put that you're protecting their data. Like, all the stuff that they're thinking about, make sure you're addressing proactively, even before, in some cases, they've even thought about the concern. So, yeah, there's, again, a lot of fundamental reminders in this book. So I would definitely give it. Are we rating this on like a scale of thumbs up or something? Or?
Yeah, we'll do a scale of 1 to 5 bedroom condo.
Okay. I'd probably give it.
We haven't read any other books together yet, so it's hard to hit the bases.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, I'd say I feel bad, but 3.5 or a 4. I mean, like, there wasn't anything wrong with it, but I don't think that it was the most amazing thing that I've read this month. But
Yeah, I'll say a 3-bedroom, but one of those bedrooms is super nice, so it's almost.
yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Oh crap! Let's see what I can come up with. I kind of think that you're on the right thing. I'm going to go with a 4-bedroom condo. It's not quite a 5-bedroom penthouse.
Yeah.
Is one of those rooms like a really tiny, like, couple of bunk beds in it? It's like
I was going to say,
it's
that
a
has
Murphy.
like a trundle bunk or a Murphy bed.
And the reason I say 4 is, while some of the information when I was reading it was dated from 2017, this is one of those books. It's a pretty quick read or listen. I think it was like 3.5, 4 hours maybe.
Yeah.
It wasn't too long. I can see myself listening to this maybe on an annual basis or every once in a while, just to say, oh yeah, I forgot that. Yeah. So I think that's pretty good there. So nice. So yes, I guess that is going to be our ranking system. So what did you guys think of the book club? Is this something that we want to keep doing?
One, I think you should ask your audience that question. Yeah. I enjoyed this thoroughly, but they might think it stinks. So let's put them at the center of the story. And us the audience.
Let's we're just the guides. What is the heroes
We
think?
just obviously we're not listening at all to the advice that we're giving and listening to ourselves.
Well, this is live, so I mean, I'm not. This is not live on Facebook that I can say, okay, everybody, click the like button. Well, nice.
Are we effective guides in their story? If we are, then I'm happy to do this again because it's fun. Always enjoy talking to you guys. So.
Well, we will have to come up with another book then. But so before we go,
a recommendation. I know what we could do. Because you've read it before as well, and I need to read it again. But Jay Baer's Utility. It's one of the most profound books that I've ever read in terms of impacting my philosophy to marketing.
I have a really good one, and I thought that it just popped up when I went. That was hold on. Oh my gosh, what is it? It's the story of Ritz Carlton from their CEO. It's a great book. I'll send it to you, Pete.
Okay. Yeah,
well, let's ask the audience to submit their book choices too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
so, and if anybody's a Star Wars fan out there and wants Alex to read Star Wars,
we could do that.
Yeah, we can do that too.
That'd be a new bit, right? We take a piece of the script that's nonsensical and have her read it.
Yes. Yeah, and I won't get any of the inside there. Oh, it's called Excellence Wins by Horst Schulze, the Ritz Carlton CEO.
Nice.
It's a good book.
Okay. Yeah, we'll check that one out as well. Well, perfect. Well, let's go ahead and we'll wrap everything up. Stuart, tell us a little bit about where we can find you and if you have anything exciting going on.
Yeah, I mean, anywhere you find social media accounts, I'm usually at Stuart Butler. If you want to shoot me an email, I'm stuart.butler@visitmyrtlebeach.com. Love to hear from listeners that I've talked to throughout the years. I actually got to hang out with a listener at a conference last week. I got to hang out with Terry, friend of the show, Terry, and that was a lot of fun. But yeah, we got a lot going on, man. I think the best advice I could give everyone is just visit Myrtle Beach as a destination. It's the greatest beach destination in the world. It's a lot of fun. We've got a lot of new things going on. Did you know, for example, in July, we have a whole bunch of classical music performances in operas going on in Myrtle Beach.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. Performance of Carmen and a bunch of stuff. So just go over to visitmyrtlebeach.com, look at the calendar of events. We've got a lot going on. 2,000 restaurants, tons of attractions, 60 miles of beaches, a lot of crazy marketing that's going on. Alex has seen some of what we've got in the pipeline, and it's out there. And then check out our YouTube channel if you want to see those commercials. Just visit Myrtle Beach YouTube channel.
And I'll have links to that in the show notes as well. And Alex, if somebody wanted to get in touch with you or even book a place in Myrtle Beach, what would they do?
I was going to say, I second all of Stuart's advice on coming to Myrtle Beach, and just make sure you book your accommodations at Condo-World.com. You'll get a very nice property. There will be no surprises.
Yeah, promo code Alex said.
Yeah, exactly. Star Wars. If you want to contact me, LinkedIn is probably the best bet. Alex Husner, Husner, or visit Condo-World.com. And of course, our podcast, AlexandDannyPodcast.com.
Perfect.
Hey, Pete,
And
you still do B News?
no, I haven't done any.
They died years ago.
B
didn't
News.
they?
Yeah, B News.
Yeah, man.
Are you the B guy now?
No, dude, so I'd say 50% of my media consumption at this point is YouTube. Like I go down these weird rabbit holes in YouTube, either learning stuff about physics or weird history stuff or whatever. My latest favorite thing on YouTube is watching apiarists remove beehives and relocate beehives. Like, it's the most fun thing to watch. It's really therapeutic. There's a couple. There's one called Texas Bee Works, which is this lady that is in Texas that she'll go to people's houses and remove beehives. These people are crazy, man. They don't have any protective clothing. They're literally scooping bees with their bare hands, and they're not getting stung.
It's so weird when you see that people who do it like just day in and day out.
Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah.
Wow.
But every episode's the exact same, and there's like 3 or 4 that I subscribe to now because I just love watching a bee removal and relocation, and it's really satisfying. I don't know why it like clicks with my brain, but it's making me want to turn into Pete DiMaio and start my own beehive because
I do miss the bee updates. Those were always fun parts of the show.
Well, I have a little bit of the mead that I made from our hives.
You still have some left?
Yeah, it's horribly disgusting. Oh, it's horribly disgusting.
Yeah.
Every time I drink, I think I think you're supposed to drink the methyl alcohol. I think it made it more like ethyl. Because every time I drank, I'd immediately have headaches and just, it was horrible.
Yeah,
So.
going
Oh, my
blind.
God.
Yeah.
So started listening to bluegrass. It was crazy. That's an old distillery joke, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, so hey, if you guys want to find TravelBoom, we're at TravelBoomMarketing.com. And LinkedIn also is the best place, LinkedIn.com/company/TravelBoomMarketing. You can find me personally at LinkedIn at Pete DiMaio. And then that's pretty much everything you need to know. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed this first edition of the Travel Boom Book Club. And we'll be back next week with more hotel news, tips, and tricks to make you a better hotelier. With that, Travel Boom is out.